It's been described as the budget everyone saw coming. It's Joe Oliver's first budget as finance minister, but the Harper government's first balanced budget in 8 years. It was a smaller budget document than we've seen in previous years and with few surprises. Critics say it doesn't do enough to create jobs or stimulate the economy, and that it provides relief for Canadians who need it the least.
They've engaged in help for the wealthy, whether it's their $2 billion tax break for the wealthiest 15% of Canadians, or doubling the tax-free savings account that actually helps the wealthiest and is being paid for by cutting old age security.
As for the opposition, it calls it a balanced budget thanks to financial engineering.
It's a bit of economic sleight of hand. The contingency fund, as the parliamentary budget officer said very recently, is there for real emergencies. That's why it's called a contingency fund. It's not something that you tap into on budget day because you're missing a couple of $1 billion.
Finance Minister Joe Oliver joins us now. And so you've heard those comments. Obviously, you do not expect the opposition to high-five you on your budget document. They never do. But I want to start with that complaint. You are positioned as stewards of the economy. You saw us through the so-called Great Recession. And yet here we are with a razor-thin surplus. The contingency is being spent not just this year, but in the out years as well. Is that prudent?
Well, actually it is. Well, first of all, as you know, Amanda, we base our numbers on 15 private sector economists. We take the average, so it's their numbers that we use. Understand, when you have a deficit, you really need a larger contingency. And when you have a surplus, the surplus can be added to the contingency to provide the cushion. And so we've got a $1.4 billion forecasted surplus and a $1 billion contingency. That's $2.4 billion, and we think that's an adequate cushion, taking into consideration in particular the fact that the price of oil has already fallen some 50%, and so we have less vulnerability in that regard.
So just characterize for me, the complaint that I've seen about this budget is that it targets very specific groups, but it doesn't do the job of kind of creating economic wealth, but in the form of economic growth, sort of big macro growth plans. Respond to that, because there are either individuals and businesses that will benefit here, but not in a macro way.
Well, of course, when you provide a tax cut to small businesses who represent 50% of workers in the private sector, this isn't a narrow segment of the population. We're talking about 700,000 businesses right across the country. I was frankly shocked that the leader of the Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau, would roll back those benefits. Also, we're providing benefits to every one of 4 million Canadian families. That's 7 million people. And that's, of course, very important as well. We've brought our tax rates down to where they were 50 years ago. We've got our small business tax down, our corporate tax for major companies is down. We're introducing a capital cost allowance for manufacturing. We're doing a great deal to help the engineers of the economy, help the economy grow and create more jobs. You know, the tax-free savings plan is the most significant measure to promote savings since the creation of RRSPs, and 11 million Canadians are participate in that. This is a program which disproportionately helps the lower and middle class families. And here again, I was amazed to learn that Justin Trudeau would turn that back as well. I mean, that to me is an assault on middle-class Canadians.
Well, let me just say, I mean, it is interesting. I saw the government's numbers that the uptake on TFSAs really is disproportionately right where you'd want it to be, kind of middle to low middle income, including obviously capturing a lot of seniors in that picture.
Absolutely.
The problem with the doubling of it, you would argue, sir, is less that the people who benefit today and more the cost to governments way down the road. So 20 years from now, when those middle-income families are not being taxed on the capital gains, there's a kind of a hard to measure, but in the maybe $80 to $100 billion cost range, are you saddling future governments with costs that they shouldn't have to deal, or at least a lack of revenues that they're going to have to grapple with?
Well, I heard that by 2080 we may have a problem. Well, why don't we leave that to Prime Minister Stephen Harper's granddaughter to solve that problem? If you have to go to 2080 to say that there's a problem with the program, I think we've got a pretty good program. We're not preventing future governments from dealing with issues 10, 20, 30, 65 years down the road. We're trying to provide prosperity in Canadians now and for future generations, and that's just what these measures will do.
So you are willing to saddle future governments then with a problem that they're going to have to solve?
No, it isn't necessarily a problem. But if there are issues, they will presumably deal with it. I can't predict precisely what will happen 65 years from now. But what I do know is now and in the foreseeable future, these are very important measures. They're fair for people who are paying a lot of taxes and need to make life we need to make life more affordable for, and they're good for the economy, good for economic growth.
Is it fair to call this a pre-election budget, as everybody is and will and has been, targeting very specific groups that kind of go to what we might call your base?
Well, it's not really narrow targeting at all. When we reduce taxes for small businesses who generate half the employment in the country, this isn't a narrow focus, nor 4 million Canadian families, 7 million people. This isn't a narrow focus either. We're benefiting seniors. They're a large part of Canadian society. We're helping newcomers. We're helping people looking for jobs. We're helping youth. We're helping a broad range of Canadians. This is a good budget. It's a budget which will benefit Canadians from coast to coast, from all walks of life.
Is it a budget that you think deserves your government a re-election?
Well, we're going to present ourselves to the people, and the people will decide. We believe it's a good budget.
All right, I want to talk to you about this complaint that a lot of the promised spending, and the big one, of course, where we see it is with the military, with defense, is in out years. In other words, you're making promises that will only come to light if you get reelected, and in some cases even several years beyond that. Is that a problem?
Well, I understand that we now have a 2% accelerator. That is to say, in the defense budget. That is to say, each year, defense budget will go up by 2%. So we're not freezing anything. And in a couple of years, it'll start going up by 3%. So we have to balance our fiscal constraints with the fact that we want to and we tend to provide the resources that our brave men and women in uniform need to do the jobs that Canadians are asking them to do.
All right, we'll leave it there. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.